were trying to think of what to call this, and we thought, well, people end up in their own echo chambers, and that typically applies to politics, current affairs, but it also happens in historical debate.
We both agree that the state of education is quite dire in this country, especially when it comes to history.
And what we kind of want to do is to reach beyond the topics that you sort of learn about in school.
These are going to be the things that your teachers didn't want to teach you about. So,
10 things your teacher didn't want you to know about history. We've been really good friends for a long time, so we're often able to show the other something interesting that the other hasn't seen. I had a history teacher at secondary school who actually got fired because he wasn't teaching us the stuff he was supposed to be for our exams.
He got us to reenact all of that different battles of Alexander the Great in the school field.
Crikey. Sounds like a health and safety nightmare.
Yeah.
Some of the spirit of that kind of is what we want to capture here is those interesting little nuggets.
I'm very much looking forward to starting.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, and we're hoping that you enjoy the ride as well. So
indeed.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Echo Changer with myself, Jacob,
and myself, Harley.
So yeah, we're finally here. We're starting this podcast. We wanted to start for a long time now.
We are indeed.
And yeah, a little bit about kind of what this is going to be about. We both agree that the state of education is quite dire in this country, especially when it comes to history. So
yeah,
we also think that a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, a lot of current events and different stuff that's happening at the moment, people don't really have the full facts. And I think we always talk about there being lots of historical parallels between the past and now and how that impacts things that are happening at the moment. So we do think that if we dug into some historical topics, bridge the gap with our mutual interest in history.
Indeed. And that speaks to the name as well, because we were trying to think of what to call this, and we thought, well, people end up in their own echo chambers, and that typically applies to politics, current affairs, but it also happens in historical debate, and historical arguments can be politicized, revisionist histories are often written to suit a particular regime or whatever, and we have both observed, I think, a kind of proliferation of the sort of conspiracy theory kind of brand of history that is very fact light, and can often be very misleading and can be misused. So we want to kind of break out of the echo chamber, if you will, change the echo. But also I'd say it's another question of the stuff you learn at school is often quite limited when it comes to history. I know myself that I kind of was, by the time I'd gone through my GCSEs, I was a bit sort of done with it. I wasn't really that interested. And then suddenly I started to rediscover it. And what we kind of want to do is to reach beyond the topics that you sort of learn about in school, or to take those topics and to look at a really unusual angle. So, for instance, today we're going to be talking about World War II and interesting angles to that, but you can apply that lens as we will be doing to any number of historical periods. Just to really delve into unusual stories, interesting little snapshots that people don't often get to look at, really.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, obviously there's so many different things that we are taught about in school, like World War II, maybe a bit about Victorians or the Tudors and things like that, and you might not always be given the full facts on
the Tudors, the
everything.
Nazis, the communists, and that's about
it. and I think also there's a lot of obviously so much that we know is around like pop culture and stuff as well. Like watch films, we listen to music, we might watch a documentary on something. But history is vast and it is much more complex than one curriculum topic in school, especially when it comes to big topics kind of like the World Wars or the Cold War even, and that's kind of what we want to dive into a bit more. So we'll have a look at some different areas of history, whether it's modern, look into the ancient world as well. There's always parallels we can take. So
because as you say, I mean, past is present when it comes to history. So everything is informed by history. I've tended to find that when I've had periods where I've just kind of switched off from the news, I haven't really been interested. My girlfriend will say to me, "Oh my goodness, have you seen such and such? I can't believe you don't read the news. Have you seen this has happened?" But often without a kind of broader kind of backdrop of what that context is. And I'll sort of say, "Well, no, I haven't seen that particular piece of news, but that makes sense because this happened, and then before that this happened, and then before that this happened." And so I think something that showed me was that when you're diving into the news, I think a lot of people take a kind of approach of oh my goodness, this thing has happened. What does it mean? What is it? And actually, if you can take a broader interest in history, if you can kind of delve beneath some of the kind of headlines, you start to see patterns. You start to see things developing through time, and that can be enormously helpful when you are in a phase of looking at the news, because often people end up with a kind of social media version of current events that are going on. Yeah, exactly, and that can be biased for a number of reasons. It can be biased because of the person that's filming the thing that they're seeing. They're just lacking. It can be shallow in the sense that they're lacking broader context. So I think there's all sorts of elements to kind of why we want to do this, and I think that's one of them.
Yeah, and I also think another point as well is that so many of the things that we are taught, or the things that we know about, are viewed through a very specific lens, and I think that's the other thing is that a lot of history is so much more nuanced than we think.
Oh yeah,
and we're obviously a lot of history is taught as kind of this black and white version of events where one side was bad, one side was good, and then different things happened. Obviously there's some cases where that is the case, but there's always a chain of events that leads up to anything. I even think one of the really prominent examples in kind of pop culture from recent times that I remember was watching the Chernobyl miniseries. And that kind of obviously details the chain of events that leads up to the Chernobyl disaster, and
chain
reactor,
kind of no pun intended.
And the cover-ups and things like that happen along the way. So there's loads of different things that we can dig into, and these are going to be the things that your teachers didn't want to teach you about. So
10 things your teacher didn't want you to know about history.
So but yeah. So I guess what we both came here from a mutual kind of interest in kind of history and just wanting to expand our knowledge on different subjects and things. But what kind of area of history did you start off with?
Well, before I say something about that, I think it's important to say we've been really good friends for a long time, and we've often brought, both in kind of political sense, but also in topics of history that we're interested in, we've kind of brought different dispositions to those. So we're often able to show the other something interesting that the other hasn't seen. And I think, again, that goes back to the kind of echo chamber issue. And if we can kind of change the echo, if we can reach across that divide, I think that's very important. But to your question, I'm half American, so and my American half is from the South. So inevitably, the American Civil War is utterly fascinating to me in all of its many shades, and there are many shades. And I think the American Civil War is often one of those topics because it's around such core kind of ethical issues like slavery. I think some of the nuances can get lost, both from the North and the South, and it's by no means, it's one of those conflicts where either side is by no means kind of 100% good or 100% bad, or there's lots and lots of nuances. And I think some of my own family history, especially being from the Upper South, North Carolina, there's a real ambivalence around the Confederacy, around slavery. And there's some really interesting stories around deserters. If you've seen the film Cold Mountain, that's a really good example. But yeah, so I love the American Civil War. I love. Recently, I've been writing a PhD, a biography of Bernard Levin, the British journalist, and that showed me the immense, incredible kind of variety of events in 20th century British political history. Because we know the kind of broad contours. But there's some absolutely fascinating stuff in the kind of margins there as well. So I'm sure this is all stuff we'll go into. But tell us, Jacob, about some of your interests.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all kind of have different views on different things and different areas of interest. I say personally, I've always been fascinated by history. Just more so from a curiosity to learn about different things that have happened in the past. And I always found it so fascinating, especially learning about like ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and these really, you know,
You've been thinking about the Roman Empire.
I've been thinking about the Roman Empire constantly. It wasn't just a TikTok trend to me.
Yeah.
It was more than that.
So it's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
State of mind.
But I was always fascinated by like Greek mythology and the different sort of stories that came from that, and the way that they were told, just the way that the society worked. Like thinking back is, you know, thousands of years of history, and all the stuff that we're learning about happened thousands of years ago, and it seems kind of crazy that was there, you know.
And we're quite used to the kind of Judeo-Christian God who is sort of nice, or you know, maybe not in the Old Testament, but certainly in the New Testament. So the Greek gods are fascinating because they're so capricious and human, and I think also something I spotted recently, and we can talk about this on another episode, is the concept of forgiveness didn't really exist in Greek and Roman culture, and was kind of largely a Christian invention. And so that's a sort of one of those things you think, wow, okay, because when we think of Roman society, it's quite brutal. It's quite it's vengeful. It's retribution is the kind of order of the day, and it's one of those interesting kind of nuggets that you think, oh yeah, well that's something in that.
Yeah, and also to that point, I mean, obviously in Greek society you had, like, and Roman society as well, it was very heavily based around honour and respect, rather than maybe so forgiveness. But there was always kind of a level of respect given to kind of outsiders and people who would come along. You'd give them like food, you'd give them water, you'd take care of them. Yeah. And those kind of values were present throughout their societies. But yeah, obviously the ancient world fascinates me, like Egypt as well to a degree. I never really did any formal education on Egypt, but
I'd like to know more about that, so maybe you can.
Yeah, I think we can dig into that. I'm pretty sure.
Educate me on that one.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, I really love learning about kind of like the World Wars, the Cold War, and just kind of like the geopolitics between those kind of
endless
as well.
Facets to
and
explore that.
And again, like I wasn't ever taught about the Cold War in school or anything. Like, I mean, I got
a bit of it, but not a huge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a bit of context. Like, I mean, obviously, Harley, you grew up in partially America and the UK. I grew up
very
about
18 months. But you've had a very interesting experience in that country, which you can tell us about.
So I was born in the UK and lived here until I was about 12, and then my family moved to New Zealand. So yeah, the rest, basically all my kind of formative years and teenage years and everything was in New Zealand, and I was in their education system. Any Kiwi will tell you that went to high school around the same time that, again, the state of history education was pretty abysmal.
It's sad to hear.
If you did regular history, you'd kind of just be taught about New Zealand history, which is about 200 years. So it wasn't the...
Well, the Americans do the same thing, and they don't seem to mind. Yeah, they don't seem to mind not having...
Yeah, but obviously, like my kind of big entry point into history was I had the opportunity to take classical history as a subject at high school, and I had a really incredible teacher as well who would get us doing lots of practical kind of things around like Roman history and Greek. So I remember reenacting he got us to reenact all of the different battles of Alexander the Great in the school field.
Crikey. Sounds like a health and safety nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, we also did a Roman wedding as well. Which involved obviously having a full dressed up ceremony, bride and groom. There's a sacrificial pig in the form of a classmate who volunteered, by the way, to do that. And then we sort of
spent prima nocte, I hope.
Spent the afternoon kind of walking into random classrooms, celebrating and having much merriment with the bride and groom. So but it's those kind of experiences that kind of formed helped encourage my interest in history. And obviously, I came back to uni, came back to the UK, and then myself and Harley met at university. So yeah, I think
in a film society.
Yeah, of all places, but I do think when it comes to history, like we talk about any kind of subject especially when you're at school or at university or something. Like the teacher really makes the subject for you, and I think when so many people learn about history, it's always in kind of a, you know, it's a very factual, like, oh, this happened this date.
A bit sort of tick box exercise.
And I think there's so much more to learn about history. There's so many more things that you can go into. And there are so many incredible stories from history that we can learn about.
Well, I had a history. I think I've told you I had a history teacher at secondary school who actually got fired because he wasn't teaching us the stuff he was supposed to be for our exams. But he was just the most inspiring guy. And he would tell us extraordinary stories. And again, I think some of the spirit of that kind of is what we want to capture here, is is those interesting little nuggets that go beyond the kind of the usual sort of kind of two-dimensional stuff. Unfortunately, he needed to tell us the two-dimensional stuff, and he didn't, so he was out on his ear. But remarkable guy, and I think one of the reasons I am now interested in history is probably because of him. He was a spectacular teacher.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think, like you say, I mean, I fully agree. We want to really capture that kind of curiosity and excitement that we have about different areas of history, because nothing like we think that everyone should know the different things that happen, and we should have more of a knowledge of the people and the things that came before us.
And it's history is alive. I mean, it's with us
now.
It's with us everywhere. Yeah, it's happening.
Quite
a lot of it's happening right now. Actually.
Because
we've lived through the last 10 years. I think we've lived through an awful lot of history. In quite a rapid.
But I guess it's also people always look at history as like a really ancient thing and something that happened hundreds of years ago. But I think people can also forget that we are writing history right now. And, even stuff from like 10, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, like that's now history and will be viewed in the same way, one day people will view our time in the same way that we view like the 1900s.
Well, we were talking just recently about the whole Brexit period and how that already feels kind of like a historical time in a way. I mean, we're obviously living through some of the...
Also like COVID as well.
Yeah, COVID too.
Like again, COVID was such a huge event, and now it feels like we're 5 years kind of past the worst part of it.
Yeah.
And it
feels like a
bit of a distant memory because the world's changed a lot since then.
Lots happened.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think like I'm really excited to sort of dive into some more topics. I think we really want to capture the excitement that we have for history and kind of also just we want to learn from each other as well. I think we both have always enjoyed having very lengthy conversations about different topics on politics, the world, on history, and other things like that.
And I think we've enriched each other's perspectives with our own sort of slightly different take on things as well. So hopefully we can transmit a little bit of that over to you, the listener.
Yeah, and also the other last point that I would make as well is that if people have more context on historical events and can learn a bit more about the parallels that history has for us, then maybe that gives us more tools to make sense of the world we live in today.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think having like the main thing that I always believe is that people should just have all the tools at their disposal to be able to make an informed decision on things.
Critical thinking. I think history is really important to critical thinking.
And I think that's an aspect of history that I don't think is really taught enough. So yeah.
And also the application of, you could reverse that as well and say the application of critical thinking to history is really important too.
Absolutely.
One kind of informs the other. It's difficult to think critically without knowing history, but it's also difficult to truly know history and truly engage with historical topics without critical thinking, without kind of putting your thinking hat on. So
like last of all, quick fire question. What's one topic, like one specific topic that you're looking forward to going into in this podcast?
Ooh, well, I don't want to give anything away about today's topics.
Or our next couple of episodes.
Yeah, or whenever it comes
whenever we upload them.
when we find the time.
We're still learning how to do all this stuff.
Technical errors are plenty. I'd say probably the American Civil War. It's the period in which I have kind of delved deepest and kind of mined the most stuff from. And I think the deeper you go into a topic, because I'm definitely somebody who believes that like I'd rather know a little bit about a lot of things than a lot of stuff about one or two things, because I think you're much more likely to have a kind of broader perspective on things if you can kind of spread yourself widely. But of course, there is nothing quite like just really, really, really drenching yourself in one particular period. And for me, the Civil War has it all. It's high drama. It's the moral questions. It's foundational to American civilization. And the Civil War, I think, more than anything, is, if we're talking about past as present, going around the American South today. It's everywhere. It's the battlefields. It's the guys in Confederate t-shirts and caps who go to the battlefield sometimes.
The reenactors as well.
It's in debates around history, around statues. We had the big sort of statue toppling moment. That's essential. Civil War is essential to that in the South. but also a sense that especially in the South, one can be a liberal and still be, I suppose I'm saying that in the American sense of the word, one can be a sort of Democrat, if you like, but also take pride and take joy in the purely military history of that period without having to kind of constantly apologize for the obvious moral failings of the South. So it's a fascinating one, and there's so many people you talk to there who are quite clearly not kind of foaming at the mouth racists who are just totally enamored with the kind of gallantry of the soldiers, of the generals. The South had some of the best generals from West Point, Lee, Jackson, all the rest of it. So that's a period I'd say. What about yourself? What are you most looking forward to covering?
Well, I mean, there's a variety, as I'm sure we'll both discover over the course of this, but I actually really can't wait to dive into, well, first of all, the Cold War, and sort of different stories around that, but the biggest one I'd say would be the life cycle of empires throughout history, because there's a kind of, I don't know if you call it a framework or kind of like a standard that like historians kind of apply to lots of historical empires and sort of suggest that there's a specific life cycle of an empire that might be longer for some than it would be for others.
Yeah.
But there's always defined periods of an empire that then lead to the fall of that empire. Obviously, you could point to pretty much any empire in history, whether that's the Roman Empire, the Macedonian Empire, towards the more kind of modern empires such as Byzantine Empire. British Empire.
I was going to say us, yeah.
Yeah, British Empire, or lots of other different.
And then you can talk about, sort of neo-empires, if you like America. That don't have an official, official imperial kind of presence.
But also in the definition of their actions, there's also aspects of American policy, like foreign policy, which is in some ways imperial. But obviously that the way of the world changes, and the sort of standards change, and I think it's interesting to go into those kind of things. So really looking forward to that. And
just a final note on that, there's a fabulous documentary for anybody who's interested currently on BBC iPlayer. Called Corridors of Power, and it's all about America's role as the quote-unquote world's policeman, and all of the various genocides, conflicts around the world that America was sort of umming and ahhing. Do we go into this one? Do we not? Which ones that they've gone into that have gone badly, which has kind of stung them, and they've gone into themselves, and another one comes along and they say, oh, maybe we don't get involved in that one. So that I would reckon that's sort of the period. I'd say it's sort of from I think it takes you from the kind of first Gulf War through the Balkans.
There's so many things.
So much there. Through to the Iraq War, Afghanistan, all the way up to Syria. So that's a brilliant documentary with some amazing interviewees from the sort of high echelons of American power. So I'd really recommend that.
But that's going to be really fun to dive into. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm very much looking forward to starting.
Me too.
So and we're hoping that you enjoy the ride as well. So
indeed.
With that, that brings us to the end of our introduction episode. We're going to obviously record as many as we can and try and have a somewhat coherent release schedule. But please do bear with us. We are still learning how to do podcasting. Another two white dudes. On a podcast.
We talked about the optics of this, and we were debating, do we make this a politics podcast? Because as I said before, we have often different perspectives on those sorts of things.
But then we kind of came up with
another two white guys talking about politics.
I don't think we need that. The world doesn't necessarily.
Maybe the world doesn't necessarily need that.
We'll leave that one to the rest of us.
But another two white guys talk about history.
That's completely okay.
That's definitely not been done. So,
but I also think that I'm hoping that with kind of the different knowledge that we bring to different topics that we kind of specialize in, and also just like our views on history and the way we kind of think about it. I'm hoping that we can sort of help more people understand more about history. We can maybe put forward some points that people maybe haven't heard before. So
that's the idea.
So we just want to have a bit of fun, talk about history, have a good time, maybe with the occasional glass of wine.
Very lavish.
And it'll
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It can be 5 o'clock wherever you're listening to this from.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The Russian Empire wanted to have more of a buffer zone between kind of the Swedish Empire and their capital city.
And Finland has always had that kind of liminal status of being positioned between
Neutral.
big power blocks.
They're a neutral power.
And
also a long history of kind of conflict with Russia and Sweden, as well as being part of the Swedish Empire for a while as well. Finland made some attempts to establish a mutual kind of military agreement with Sweden.
Interesting kind of echo of the colonial interest.
Yeah. So continuation war lasted from obviously 1941, a few days after the Germans declared war on the Soviet Union and broke the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
So it's kind of the turbocharged version of the Winter War with the Germans on side.
The Soviets kind of recognized that it would be an impossible sort of task to try and occupy Finland. Tell you a bit more about how they became neutral and kind of the way that panned out for them.